Welcome back, everybody. It's time for another installment of Friday Q&A. As always, thank you so much for this week's questions. A little bit of housekeeping. Before we get going, there's a Ragdoll 5-track EP called Live from Isolation, which you can now go and download directly from our Bandcamp page. It will also be live on all the major digital platforms if you want to download it or if you want to stream it. Essentially, we've rolled together the lockdown mixes that we've done over the last couple of months and put them on a 5-track EP so you can enjoy them wherever you like. It would be awesome if you want to check that out. Also, I have finally set up a Patreon page if you want to support what I do directly and get access to some exclusive content, some kind of longer deep dive videos, things like that, photos of my cat, guitar tab, all the usual good stuff. I will put a link in the video description if becoming a patron is something that interests you. Alrighty, without further ado, let's get into this week's questions. There are a few questions about this guitar, the same questions that always pop up. It's a 2008 SC245, it's my number one. The pickups are stock, but they are not the 5708 pickups, they are the 245 pickups, so they're a little bit hotter than the PAF style 5708s. The only thing that I've changed on this guitar is I have replaced the machine heads with Godot SD90 locking machine heads, not because I didn't like the other machine heads, they just weren't locking machine heads, and I'm lazy and I love locking machine heads. I'm playing it through the Axe FX3 today, and I've got probably my favorite Mesa rectifier sound ever, which is the Recto 1 orange model in the Axe FX3 with the new precision drive in the latest beta firmware, and it sounds mega. That makes life worth living, let me tell you that. All right, let's roll on. That was also a question, what's my favorite Recto software or otherwise? I do love that amp right there, my old 2-channel Rev F, Rev G, kind of in between. It's a transition model. It's the amp you hear on our album Back to Zero, but the Recto 1 orange in here basically sounds exactly the same as that one. It's just super, super consistent. There are days when that amp sounds incredible and other days when it sounds okay. Just kind of the nature of the beast with tubes, I guess. So yeah, I do absolutely adore the Mesa models in the Axe FX3, in case you hadn't already realized that. Are we going to see a 5 killer riffs for Queensryche? Yes, you're going to see that. It's all about me knuckling down and learning all the bass lines and programming all the drums and all that kind of good stuff. So the guitar riff side of it is pretty straightforward. It's all the other stuff, and it's kind of the production side of it that really takes time. So that one is in the works. It is coming soon, along with a bunch of other 5 killer riffs videos. We were talking about pickups 2 seconds ago. Have I tried bare knuckle pickups? I have. Actually, a friend of the channel, Troy Nababan, has a set of bare knuckles in his main Les Paul, which is an awesome guitar, and they sound really, really good. Bare knuckle make fantastic stuff, in my opinion. Every bare knuckle pickup I've ever tried has sounded pretty awesome. And yeah, they do what they say on the tin, so that's pretty cool. Speaking of friend of the channel, Troy Nababan, this question was asked a couple of weeks ago and I didn't get to it, so apologies for that. But how did I meet and start collaborating with Troy? This actually goes all the way back to the way I met Ragdoll's drummer, Cam. So back in the days of MySpace, I was putting up little guitar demos on MySpace, and one day I got this message from a guy called Troy, and he said, hey, looks like we like the same kind of music, meaning Cacophony, Racer X, Judas Priest, all that kind of stuff. By the way, I have an ADA MP1, and of course I have an ADA MP1, and at that moment we knew that we were going to be best friends. And that was probably 2005, 2006, and I actually ended up joining a band that Troy and Cam were playing in, and I guess that band over time slowly evolved into Ragdoll, and Troy has recorded and produced all of our stuff, and you know, he's just very, very good at what he does. He also plays guitar in a stadium to like 20 to 60,000 people every fortnight as well, which is pretty fantastic. So if you're a Frio Dockers fan, look out for him up there. He actually played my Dean V live the other week, which was which was pretty fantastic. We're also super lucky here in Perth that the COVID situation is pretty much under control at the moment, so we can have crowds back at things like the footy, or we can have people at gigs, and we're not risking people's lives, which is super duper important. So yeah, we've been working with Troy for a long time. He only just gets better at what he does. He's one of those guys that you work with where he plays guitar better than you. He plays bass, he sings, he produces, he kind of does everything. And yeah, he should start a YouTube channel and start spilling some of those secrets, because I know if you like what I do, you would absolutely love what he does. He also has a podcast called That Sucks, which you should all subscribe to. So yeah, friend of the channel, Troy Nababan, get on it. That precision drive's really, really good with that Recto. Alrighty, this is a good question. Somebody asked about the SIR reactive load and using it with software IR loaders, and do different IR loaders have a different sound? This is an interesting question because different IR loaders support IR lengths that are different. So if you think about taking an impulse of a particular cabinet, the longer you sample that cabinet, essentially, the more of the room sound you're going to get out of that. So just because an IR is shorter doesn't necessarily mean it is worse. Sometimes shorter IRs are good because they can kind of cut out some of that room sound. This has kind of been not thrashed to death, but there are some really good things you can read on the internet about this stuff. But basically, most of them sound within spitting distance of one another. Stuff like the 2Notes IR loader, there's Fractal Audio's Cab Lab, there's Nadir, there's a whole bunch of them. Most of them kind of do the same thing, so I wouldn't worry too much about, the IR length or the IR loader specifically having a sound. It's nowhere near as much as an influence as the actual impulse response itself. If you want to try some free impulses, I will link my free impulses in the video description as well, which I'm using at the moment. And yeah, I like them. A bunch of other people like them. You may like them. And if they don't work for you, then there's a whole bunch of other ones you can go and try out. I know York Audio has some free impulses, and his stuff is really, really good. Alrighty, we're just jumping around everywhere at the moment. This is the little part of the video called What Do You Reckon? So what do you reckon about Steelheart? Yes, the first album is awesome, and when I was growing up, everybody talked about the singer in Steelheart as having like the biggest range. I think he did some of the singing on the movie Rockstar as well. Sticky Side Up I really like, and She's Gone, that is like one of the best 80s power ballads of all time. Insane vocals on there. What do I reckon about Running Wild, some pirate metal? I got a cool little story about this. When I was 16, I want to say, I went around to a guy's house who was a few years older than me, and he was a drummer, and we had a jam, and he was like, bro, you got to check out this band. They're pirate metal. And then he played me some Running Wild, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was really into a band called 3 Inches of Blood as a teenager as well, and their first album had a bunch of songs which were like a concept little trilogy of songs about pirates. So that was kind of pirate metal as well. I do love me some pirate metal. I think I wanted to be in a pirate metal band for about 20 minutes at one stage in my teens. But Running Wild are really good. They've got some good songs and some good albums. Where was the other what do you reckon question? What do I reckon about the Line 6 Helix? Fantastic, as with basically all of the current generation of modelers, whether it's Fractal Audio, whether it's the Atomic Amplifier, the Kemper, the Helix. It's really, really good, and it works for a bunch of people. It may or may not work great for you, but there's a whole bunch of people out there who love the Helix. I personally tried all of them, and I ended up kind of landing on the Fractal Audio stuff. That's also why you see so much content about the Fractal Audio stuff here, because I like it so much, and it works for me, so hopefully I can share some of that love. I mean, that's just basically my vibe on here. I love guitar and guitar stuff, and the guitar stuff that I love, I want to climb onto the roof and shout it out to the world about how cool it is. But yeah, the Helix is a very, very cool unit. Alrighty, is that it when it comes to what do you reckon about? This is an excellent question. Is there anything unique about Australian rock music? I saw this question and I went, not really. And then I thought, what's actually kind of unique about Australian rock music is the 70s and 80s, Australia had a very unique pub rock culture. And that pub rock culture kind of spawned most of the great Australian bands from that era, whether it is, all the kind of rock music that came out of Australia in the 70s, which most people would be familiar with bands like AC/DC, maybe the Angels, all the way up to basically what still happens. You've got Cold Chisel started off as a pub band, In Excess started off as a pub band, just about all the music coming out of Australia, whether it was rock, post-punk, it was that culture of going to see live music in Aussie pubs that made those bands. And sadly, by the time I was gigging, that had largely been lost for various reasons. But I would say that the one really unique thing about Australian rock music is that pub rock culture. And I could go into depth with this, but I'm not really the person to talk about it. There's quite a few things you can look up on YouTube about all of that, and I would highly recommend it. How do I record when I use plugins? For example, if I'm using the Mercurial stuff or the Nembrini stuff or the ML stuff, I have a Universal Audio Apollo interface, which has a high impedance input for guitar. I just plug straight into that and then assign that input to the plugin, arm it in the track on the Pro Tools session, because I use Pro Tools, and then I go. I don't really do anything else. The UAD guitar input is just really, really good, and it seems to work for most of those things. Alrighty, the metronome block in the Axe FX3. This question basically said, could I use my influence with them, which I don't really have any influence with them. I just make a lot of videos about it, so I can't really do that other than I would suggest to everybody, if they want something and they're a Fractal user, go to the forum and go to the wish list, because all the wish list items get read. For example, the precision drive block the precision drive type in the drive block, people have been asking about that for a while. It was requested and it eventually got implemented. So if that's something you would like, go to the forum and wish list it, because I think that's a pretty good thing. It would be nice to just be able to foot switch the metronome on and off, as you said, from a separate block. I feel like someone suggested that before. So that is pretty cool. Could I do a Fractal preset with 3 scenes for kind of like prog stuff? Well, let me do this. I'll bring up my main live preset, which is, where is it? Somewhere over here. Here we go. This is my main chunky rhythm scene. I have an over-the-top lead scene, and then I have a clean scene on there. I think that was probably the least prog metal stuff I could have played with that, but that's what I have going on in my live preset. I never use a clean scene live, but it's in there. That one's called Mark IV Live, and you can go and download it from Exchange. You'll also notice that that preset wasn't as bright and aggressive as the Recto preset. I've got a bit of high-end roll-off in there because this preset gets played really, really, really loud. I've done a video breaking down why I made those choices on there, but I do like that lead sound a lot. That sounds good. Alrighty, 2 more questions to round this out. Ryan's bass rig for ragdoll gigs. If we're doing a big show and we're using the Axe FX3, I have a preset, which is basically this preset, but it has a row with some bass stuff in it. So he will go through the same Axe effects as I will, and will automate. Basically, when I step on a solo scene, the bass gets a bit dirtier and things like that. So that is really, really handy. Otherwise, when I'm using the FM3 Live, he just has a SansAmp bass driver. He uses his Music Man Stingray, and he has a Boss TU3. And that's it. It's set and forget, and he gets on with doing his thing of singing and playing and, getting shocked on the microphone without missing a note. On that note, do you think we'll come back and do a USA tour when possible? I would love to do that. Touring the USA has been something we've done with Ragdoll quite a lot in the past. I love it. I love all the people we get to meet. Everybody is so great to us. A lot of our fans are over there, and basically we've spent most of our time as a band kind of focusing on the US market. So whenever it is we're able to come back and do that, we are definitely going to do that. However, at the moment, nobody knows when we'll be able to do that. And I've just kind of stopped thinking about it and stressing about it. It will be an absolute privilege and a luxury if we do get to come back and do that when it's safe to do that. But like I said, when it's safe to do that. And on that note, please, everybody out there, stay safe. Be good to one another. There's never been a better time to stay home and play some guitar and practice and write some music and do some of those good things. So I'm going to sign off. I'll play you all out. See you next time.